hope it's sturdy. Okay. What a beautiful day. Well, good morning, and I want to thank you all for joining us. Before we get started, I want to welcome Secretary Naig, and Deputy Secretary Kenny is with us also. And of course, you're going to hear from Sandy in just a moment with the Iowa Rural Development Council, and of course, the Lieutenant Governor as well. It is an absolute pleasure to be here today with so many individuals who share our passion for strengthening the economy in all four corners of our state. You know, as someone who grew up in rural Iowa, I am driven to create opportunities throughout our state. And like I said, in my condition of the state, while I absolutely love our capital city and everything that it has to offer, I believe that the heart, soul, and spirit of Iowa will always remain in our small towns and rural communities. I often say, and I have said for a long time, that really Iowa is like one big small town, and that's so true in many ways. When you think about how we come together as communities, whether it's in the face of tragedy like natural disasters or the flooding, the flash flooding that we've seen over the last month, or whether it's to rally on the latest major accomplishment that the community has undertaken and has reached their goal. Rural Iowa, it's just simply a part of me and who I am. And in fact, we are standing in the county where I was born. My upbringing and background informs how I approach problems and how I make decisions. That rural Iowa small town spirit is not just a part of me, it's what this entire state is made of. It's one of the things that define us as Iowans. It's that small town pride and feel that we see and hear wherever we are. And that's why preserving rural Iowa is a key priority of my administration. We want to maintain that kind of vibrancy to make sure that there is opportunity in towns large and small across our state. Over the past few months, we've had many just outstanding meetings with a broad group of stakeholders from throughout Iowa. We've been presented with numerous collaborative efforts and success stories that are taking place in all four corners of our state. But what we know is, though, even though there are great things happening, we still have a lot of work to be done to keep our main streets alive and vibrant in rural Iowa. And that's why today I'm be signing Executive Order number 3, which will create the Governors Empower Rural Iowa initiative. This initiative is tasked with finding concrete solutions for the unique challenges and opportunities that exist in rural Iowa. Through this executive order, we're establishing a partnership with the Iowa Rural Development Council. And through this partnership, the Governors Empower Rural Iowa initiative will identify legislative, regulatory, and policy changes necessary to increase opportunities and quality of life in rural Iowa. The work of the Governors Empower Rural Iowa initiative will be accomplished through an executive committee as well as 3 task forces. And those are investing in rural Iowa, growing rural Iowa, and connecting rural Iowa. Each of the task forces will start meeting this fall, and we'll be asking them for them to make initial recommendations in time for the next legislative session. So I will, at this point, go ahead and sign the executive order. So this is Executive Order number 3, and whereas the overall health of Iowa's rural communities is vital to the long-term success of this state, and whereas in order for rural Iowa to thrive, it must be an attractive target for investment by private sector, and the public sector must be a wise investment partner by effectively utilizing its limited resources. And whereas in order for rural Iowa to keep its talented individuals and bring Iowans back home, local leadership must be effectively developed, must strategically plan, and must set a vision to make Iowa an attractive place for people to live and work. And whereas broadband connectivity is essential for nearly every aspect of life today, for business, for education, for agriculture, just to name a few, we know we must ensure that rural Iowa is fully connected to the world. So now, therefore, I, Kim Reynolds, Governor of the state of Iowa, will sign Executive Order number 3. Okay. Okay. One of the things that I want to emphasize before I give the other speakers an opportunity to make some comments is that, you know, the conversation doesn't end with the 3 areas that I mentioned. There are many potential issues that we can work on to address in the future years. We may expand the focus to tackle other issues that impact rural Iowa, especially as we start to hold these the summits that the Lieutenant Governor will be talking about. As we have traveled the state, we've had so many Iowans express an interest in getting involved. And so we just want to say there's the first step to get involved in the initiative is we want to invite those that are interested to apply through the website. And that website is openup.iowa.gov. And if you could, we'd like you to go on and apply and do that by August 1st if you can, because we want to get this up and going. And we're looking for diverse membership with shared interest in empowering rural Iowa for generations to come. So at this time, it's my privilege to bring to the podium the Lieutenant Governor, and he's going to give you some more details on the work of the 3 task forces during the upcoming Ideas Summit. Lieutenant Governor.
Well, thank you and good morning. I'd like to start by thanking Governor Reynolds for making rural Iowa a priority for our administration and for entrusting me with this responsibility. We're very excited to get to work. Signing the executive order today has ordered the creation of 3 task forces, which I will co-chair along with Sandy Ehrig, who I will introduce more formally shortly. The governor has asked each task force to develop initial recommendations by the end of the year so they can be considered during the next legislative session. Again, as Governor said, we want to emphasize that this is just the starting point of the conversation. Of course, there are many complex issues facing rural Iowa, and they're often interrelated and overlapping. It begs the question of where do we start? I thought I'd use my time this morning to outline where the governor has asked us to start. The Investing in Rural Iowa Task Force will be asked to focus its initial recommendations on the issue of housing. We have a very different kind of housing crisis in rural Iowa than what the nation faced 10 years ago. Today, we have a shortage of quality market rate housing in rural Iowa, and it impacts our ability to recruit workforce, and it restricts our ability to grow. Therefore, the governor has asked this task force to tackle the issue of how we can improve access to quality housing in rural Iowa. The second task force is the Growing Rural Iowa Task Force. And the governor has asked that task force to focus initially on an important yet intangible issue. And that's the issue of leadership. Everyone agrees that strong leadership is a real difference maker in rural communities. This task force will therefore focus its initial work on identifying ways to encourage leadership development and strategic planning in rural communities. And finally, the Connecting Rural Iowa Task Force will focus initially on the issue of financing connectivity. Broadband access is extremely important in today's economy. It can connect entrepreneurs to markets around the world. It will allow us to fully leverage new technologies. And it's important when it comes to attracting young people to Iowa. But it is of course, very expensive. This task force will focus its initial efforts on tackling the issue of how we can effectively and sustainably finance better connectivity with limited resources. Again, we want to emphasize that this is just the starting point for the initial recommendations, and the work of the governor's Empower Rural Iowa initiative will be ongoing into the future, and will work on other issues within their scope in the years to come. Over the past few months, the governor and I have spent a tremendous amount of time engaging with folks who share our passion for rural Iowa. Through these meetings, we were able to establish a shared vision with the Iowa Rural Development Council. The governor's Empower Rural Iowa initiative will build upon the outstanding framework that's been created by the Iowa Rural Development Council and bring additional stakeholders and resources to the table, and continue to use the bully pulpit of our roles to shine the spotlight on rural Iowa. So for more on the Iowa Rural Development Council, I'd like to introduce to you Sandy Ehrig. Sandy leads Iowa Farm Bureau's Renew Rural Iowa initiative, and she's currently the chair of the Iowa Rural Development Council. Sandy? you.
Well, wow, what a beautiful day for us to be in this outstanding rural community to announce this new cooperative effort. Thank you to Governor Reynolds and Lieutenant Governor Gregg for this opportunity. We know rural development happens in rural communities because of the local leadership. So we want to thank Winterset and the Madison County Chamber of Commerce Executive Director Heather Riley for arranging for this today, and also Tom Laniers with the Madison County Economic Development Organization, who's standing in the shade. We know that they are both great examples of leaders who are helping to promote vitality for Madison County. Well, I'm really proud to represent the Rural Development Council here today as we forge this new relationship with the governor's Empower Rural Iowa initiative. It's not by accident that the Rural Development Council was invited to work cooperatively with this initiative. So you may be wondering, who is this Rural Development Council? Well, we are a nonpartisan organization of more than 40 public-private rural resource providers, federal, state, associations, nonprofits, and recently several for-profit companies. We were organized in 1993 because we're all engaged in rural issues. We've survived the ups and downs of budget cuts, priority and leadership changes, including 5 presidents and 5 governors over the years. Historically, we've held quarterly meetings to share and learn from each other, and we still do that. But the council really got fired up in 2016 because we needed new energy, a new plan of action, new leadership, and new members. So let's meet those leaders, some of the folks that are here today. First, I'll start with who's not here. Our executive director, who's fabulous, Bill Menners in DC, or he would have joined us. You might recognize his name because he most recently was USDA's state director for rural development. Our vice chair is Rand Fisher, the president of the Iowa Area Development Group. And leadership team members, I'll just ask them to wave. Amy Coolers and Jim Thompson are here with the Economic Development Authority. Gary Taylor and Mark Reining with Iowa State University. Kathy Anderson with the Association of Business and Industry. Bethany Wilcoxon with McClure Engineering. Sue Cosner with the Iowa Area Development Group. And Caitlin Jarzen, I believe, is standing in for Dave Duncan with the Iowa Communications Alliance. Other Rural Development Council members have joined us today too. I won't introduce them, but I'd sure like them to wave as well, so you can see the vast number of participants and variety that we have shared with this work. So what's new? What have we produced because of this effort? I said we have new energy. Well, what are we doing? We've been working really hard, and we decided we had to connect our resources through a rural summit. So that first rural summit was November of 2016 in Jefferson. We had over 300 attendees from 63 rural communities, bringing teams of 3. That was our one requirement. They had to come in teams of 3 because we know things don't change. Leadership needs to work in 3s at least to make things happen. The purpose of our summit, we shared best practices, we motivated folks, we connected those resources with community issues, and we as resource providers learned a lot from those community folks. We also provided a workbook so that the summit would not just be an event, but provide an ongoing guidebook for communities that they identified during the summit. Well, not surprisingly, the #1 issue that was noted consistently that we've already heard from the Lieutenant Governor was housing. Everybody is working or trying to work on housing in our rural places. So we knew that the Rural Development Council really needed to get their hands dirty and get out there and start helping with this housing effort. Sue Cosner is leading our Housing 360 group, which we're just in my office yesterday working on a plan for continuing to help. But currently their team is working in Southwest Iowa and Northeast Iowa with regional economic development groups. And I saw a list, a page long, of communities that they have required and encouraged their services. So we know they're in demand, and we'll keep working. We also loaded the bus last summer and took a field trip, went to 4 different communities to learn best practices. We as the council don't have all the answers, so we needed to find out and learn some things too. which prompted us to have the second Rural Summit, which we just held in April in Grinnell at this cool boutique hotel that's a wonderful example of repurposing a school for commercial use. Fabulous location. And this time we had 70 communities with their teams of 3. We expanded our summit to a day and a half, and our themes this time, not just housing, but leaders, people, and places, all 4 of those things. And speaking of people and places, we are very excited as the Rural Development Council for this opportunity to work with our state officials with these ideas summits that have been promoted and encouraging people to get signed up to participate. The next time that we get together, we're going to be announcing those people and places. So that will be really fun for all of us as we all work together to empower rural Iowa. Thank you.
Thank you. Great job. Great job. Ooh, you okay? Okay. Well, now I think you can see why this is a great partnership, a great collaboration. We've heard wonderful, wonderful ideas. There are best practices happening all across the state, and this is an opportunity to bring those best practices together to engage Iowans all across the state of Iowa and really put the pedal to the metal and start to see some results and see some great things happening in small communities all across the state. I also want to thank Secretary Naig. He is a ex officio and part of this initiative as well, so he'll be available for comments afterwards. We're going to do a gaggle with the press. I think it's really important as an agricultural state that you are a big part of this this initiative. So thank you, Mike, for being a part of it. We appreciate it very much. Winterset is a great example of a community that is really invested in their Main Street. As I said, I was born in this county. Kevin, I was raised in St. Charles. I'm looking at Montross Pharmacy across the state. While it wasn't called Montross when I was growing up, it was Percy's Drugstore. There was not a better place to get a chocolate root beer or to get a chocolate malt and to gather with my friends and family and community members all across the state. And that's what we want. We want unique shops. We want places to gather. We want activities happening in the courtyard. And that's what this, and we want to make sure that we're bringing and keeping our young people in communities all across the state. So thanks for being here. We're excited about the initiative, and let's go empower rural Iowa. Thank you very much. I don't know what to do. She can come. Hello, how are you?